I want to come back to the triad for a moment. You know, I had said a few videos ago that the triad was change in physiology, change in focus, change in language. And in the last video, I started to tease the language piece, but I didn't come out and blatantly say it. And I want to really dig into the language piece and how impactful that is for the brain. And the illustrations I want to give are, first off, one of the things I use as a diagnostic tool whenever talking to somebody is listening to the words they use. And sometimes what I'll hear is, it's always this way, it's always going to be this way. And they're making global statements. Global statements like always, never, those sorts of statements tell me that the blood flows to the amygdala. You are totally in a fight or flight response. There's no way in my mind, I don't care what the challenges you give me. Half the times when I talk to people, they say this, I can do this or I can do A or B. That's it. It's A or B. Global statements. My experience is there's no problem you can't bring to me. I can't come up with 17 solutions. 17 is a random number, just in all disclosure. But it's a good illustration of if you can't come up with lots of ways to solve a problem, you need to change your state. And so I use language as a great diagnostic tool. Secondly is, imagine this one. And I'm going to use an illustration of shopping. You know, so I'm going shopping at the grocery store and there's a certain brand of whatever product I want and I go there and they're out, right? That happens sometimes, especially as we have mad rushes during snowstorms or COVID or whatever it is that causes crazy rushes into the stores. But you go to the store and your favorite brand of product is gone. Some people are like, are you kidding me? And they get all upset. They start using these words, right? I can't believe this, and big explosive emotional words. And at the end of that, how do you end up feeling? Like it's a huge problem that your favorite brand of toilet paper or favorite brand of beer or favorite brand of chips is gone. Now, is that really an appropriate response for your favorite brand of something being out? What if you look at it and go, hey, this is a chance for me to try a new one, and maybe I'm going to like this new one even better? What a shift in language. So I find that because of the explosive language we sometimes use to describe stuff, and I'm trying to use cheesy examples like shopping, but maybe it's something else. We use such big explosive language that it conjures big, huge emotion that isn't quite appropriate for whatever the challenge might be. And we end up in a fight or flight response. Now, do I need to be in a fight or flight response over milk or bread or chips or beer? Is that appropriate? And the answer is no, it's not. So language plays a huge role in how we describe things and thus our emotional response to it. And I'll give you another kind of cheesy example that's just for fun. If I write down the words, I didn't steal the bike. Imagine I put the emphasis on I didn't steal the bike. Well, it insinuates I didn't do it, but so I know who did. Or I didn't steal the bike. No, I borrowed it. Kind of the same to the person I took it from, though. Or I didn't steal the bike. Now it puts the emphasis on I didn't steal a bike, but I stole a car. So look at how just change in emphasis changes the entire sentence structure relative to the outcome and how people hear it, or how we hear it ourselves. So these are all illustrations of how language is really, really powerful and creates a lot of permanence in the brain. You know, one of the illustrations I have with my kids all the time, one of my boys, every now and then, he'll beat himself up, right? He's 8 years old, he's trying to figure out this how not to lie thing. And usually whenever he gets caught lying, it's about something really stupid. So just last night, I'm having this conversation with him, and I catch him in some dumb lie, and a white lie even, and all of a sudden he's like, I'm just dumb, and he rolls over and just starts sobbing. Now, myself, I hear that, and I hear the programming of I'm just dumb becoming something that he will retain for a lifetime. So even while he was crying, I'm like, dude, first off, we all make mistakes. I've made a million more mistakes than you will ever make, I promise you, because your dad is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And I was like, buddy, I want you to come back and tell me that you are not dumb. You make mistakes, yes. You're human, yes. But you're not dumb. And I made him, even though he was crying, change that language because I want it to become permanent for him, that he's not dumb. Because then it becomes this identity piece, which is, you go back to one of the early videos in the series where I had you write down, I'm just. This is how we create identity crises for ourselves. And I think back to my own marital challenges, right? One of my stories I tell all the time is how my wife and I went through a whole lot of marital counseling. And, prior to that, my dad was not a good guy. So, at one point during marital counseling, the counselor's like, hey, do you ever want to have kids? I'm like, oh, no, are you kidding me? There's no way. And they were like, why not? I'm like, I had a terrible dad. I'll be a terrible dad. And look at the programming I had. And I've since learned a lot, and I have, I think, become a great dad because I did a lot of work to change who I was. So as I think about that relationship example that lots of people write down, I thought I was going to be a terrible spouse. Here I am in counseling, right? How good of a spouse can I be if I'm in counseling? I didn't even want to go to counseling because I didn't want to admit that I needed the help. It was her fault. No, it wasn't her fault. It was my fault. I sucked at being a spouse. Now, that didn't have to become permanent, though. It just had to change. I had to be willing to look in the mirror and change it. And I didn't have to be a terrible dad. In fact, I'm an exceptional dad. I will be proud of how good of a dad I am. I have an amazing relationship with my children because I was willing to change it. I was willing to look in the mirror and be humble enough, vulnerable enough to go, I can see the challenges I've got, and I can see a pathway to change it. And I was willing to admit it. And this triad was really helpful for me in this space. I had to be just willing to slow down and think about what I thought about. The brain is such a powerful programming tool, and it's a very primitive brain that was designed to protect us, right? And designed to protect us from the saber-toothed tiger. That's how primitive the brain is. The challenge is that now we think that we need protection from our favorite bread being gone, and we apply the same principles that we used to from the saber-toothed tiger to my bread is gone, or the gas line is long, or whatever it might be. You'll find I hope as you're listening to this, that you're sitting there scratching your head going, man, I do this, or I do that, or whatever the illustrations might be for you. It's why I'm trying to give a variety of examples. Because if you can't look in the mirror and see those things for yourself, you don't have a chance in changing them. The triad is a great tool, but only if you can see it in the mirror and admit it. That's why I had you start off with the exercise of writing down your own challenges. So as I think about the triad, I want to reiterate it again before I move on. Think about how, whenever you've had a hard time, what was your physiology? Was it small and closed off and not able to breathe? Was it low energy? Was it high energy? Because there's times where it's high energy, right? When you're upset or pissed off. What was your focus? Was it on all the problems, or was it on the potential solutions? Was it on the fact it could be better, or it's always going to be worse? What was your language? Was it explosive to make things bigger? Was it colorful? Was it useful? Was it productive? Was it global statements? I hope you're sitting there thinking to yourself about some of the illustrations in your life and how the triad perhaps trapped you, but by the same token, how it can potentially free you from whatever those traps are for you. So reflect on those for a few minutes before you go on to the next video about how some of those examples might be applicable in your life. And then we want to come back to what are the actual techniques we can use. I've given you some on how to change your state, but how do we solve problems now? Because if we first can't change our state, we can't solve the problem. And so the next step becomes, how do we solve the actual problems of whatever it is in our life? I hope you found this to be helpful.